let's get into young voters and the Democratic Party. And I think the context here is really important, which is that just a few years ago, Democrats were saying, young voters are this rising coalition. It's the most diverse generation. Millennials are the most diverse generation in history. They're coming into their own. I mean, the oldest millennials are my age. They're 40 years old. So you have this large voting bloc growing in power that is overwhelmingly progressive. Gen Z is, by most counts, seems to be even more progressive than millennials. This is our ticket. We're going to have permanent political dominance. I think, what was it, like Carville and somebody who wrote the book that was like 40 more years and how Democrats are going to be in power forever. Well, that isn't working out. We've covered extensively here, and it's reflected in this poll too, how Latino voters are switching over increasingly to the Republicans. So the idea that you could just bank on them and you don't have to do anything to actually, deliver for their material needs, that's flown out the window. But they also are facing a massive revolt among young voters under the age of 30 in particular. So let's go ahead and put this first part up on the screen. So as bad as Biden's overall approval rating stands at 33%, among the youngest demographic, those under 30, he is at 19% approval rating. 69% of voters under 30 disapprove. That is 50 points underwater. This individual describes these numbers as apocalyptic. I saw a lot of cope in the comments that were like, these people don't vote anyway.
Oh, yeah?
Which, yeah. Okay, all right. First of all, youth turnout has surged in a number of elections, number one. Number two, again, this was the demographic that you all were counting on, that you all were lionizing, that you all were saying was the future of politics. And now that they're like, we're not happy with the direction that you're going in. You're like, who cares about you anyway? You don't vote. Go away. You suck. So it is pretty extraordinary. And by the way, so overall, let's put this next piece up on the screen. So overall, you have 64% of Democrats who say we want someone other than Biden. Voters under 30, 94% say they would prefer a different presidential nominee. 94% of Democratic voters under the age of 30 say they want a different presidential nominee. I mean, can you think of a more stunning rebuke, Saagar? It is just incredible, these numbers. And this, just as a reminder, in the presidential election, in terms of age demographics, this was the group that went the most strongly for Biden, that had the highest numbers for Biden. At the beginning of his presidency, he had his highest approval ratings among this group, was in the 60s. Now, 19% approval.
Yeah, it's horrific. I mean, your next tweet, you actually did a great job. Let's go and put this up there on the screen, which is that 0% of voters under 30 say the economy is excellent. 1% say it's good. Guess which might be why Biden's approval rating is just 19%. I often feel like we're taking crazy pills whenever we do our show just because we see the world so differently than the rest of the people here in Washington. And I think it's because these are overwhelmingly our audience. Like, we understand what people are going through. I mean, personally, I think the reason why the show even works is because we speak to the types of problems and to an ethos and a mindset and a worldview which is completely underrepresented. And it exactly shows up here. People were willing to give Biden a chance. I think both of us were whenever he came in office. I personally thought it'd be much easier for him in order to do his job. I didn't think it would be that difficult. And yet, he's failed at every measure. And younger voters are the ones who disproportionately are going to feel a lot of this. I mean, we're talking about right now, the very basics of growing up, being a young adult in America, your first purchases, buy like a car right now. Okay, good luck. Seriously. Average car month payment right now is $700, not even counting insurance and all that other stuff. Credit card debt is sky high. Home, not going to happen. Rental markets, actually, one of the problems with the Fed jacking interest rates up is it's squeezing a lot of buyers out of the buying market, which means that renting prices are actually going to go up even higher. So even though you're a permanent renter, now your rent inflation is up by 20%. Your food is up dramatically. Any of the general quality of life, first vacations, first savings, all of that eroded. Your wages only up by 2%. The bargaining power you thought that you had in 2021, that's mostly gone as a result of the overall inflation for cost of living. So your life is materially worse. I mean, the American dream was you're going to be better off than your parents. And I mean, that hasn't been the case for probably 15 years now in the United States, but it's especially not the case in 2022. So I don't see how you could have that. and not look at what's happening in the country and say, this is just wrong. This is messed up. Joe Biden is a president. At the end of the day, he may not be responsible for events, but he is responsible for reacting to those events. And he's failed at every turn, I think.
The level of contempt that I'm starting to see from the party towards young people is pretty astonishing too. And compare that to 2008, when Obama wins and you have this, all these young college voters who are organizing for him, they're super excited, and there are all these articles lauding this generation, and wow, they're so incredible, and this is the Democratic Party future, and this is the future of the country. And now that they have any critique of the party, it's instantly like, screw you. I mean, the comment that we told you about yesterday from Biden's communications director, who was like, well, we're not just trying to please these activists who are out of step with the mainstream of the Democratic Party. I mean, that is aimed directly at the young, youthful protesters who are out on the street, especially with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And one thing that was also unique about this demographic, we already mentioned that, their issue priorities are different, and their critique of this presidency is also different. They're actually not that concerned about his age. They're just concerned with his policy and his job performance. They were the group that was most likely to say that abortion was their number one issue. In fact, this was the only age group where abortion tied with economic issues in terms of an issue priority. So the failures of the Biden administration to respond in any sort of a timely or forceful manner has really, really soured this group of voters where, this is a key priority and key concern. It makes sense. They're childbearing age. This is like a really active live issue for them in terms of how they're going to be able to live their lives. So it's incredibly logical that that would be a concern. I also want to say this is not just a problem for the Democratic Party. I think the disillusionment of voters under 30, I would say millennials and Gen Z, this is a real issue for the country, because when you ask them who would you vote for, you have 30, so in a hypothetical Biden-Trump general election, who would you vote for? 38% say Biden, which is dramatically lower than what he got last time. 30% say Trump, 7% say someone else, and 22% say we just tap out, we just stay home. If you have that kind of disenchantment with the political system, where 1 in 5 voters is saying, I don't care about either, I'm out, I'm not gonna bother, this is really damaging to the country as a whole. And of course, we already have a huge pool of non-voters. If you have these young voters from the jump saying, there's nothing in this for me, there's no reason for me to bother to show up for either of these two buffoons, that's a bad sign. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.